Hey everyone, welcome to another Tony D's Media podcast. And my dog has gone berserk and run out of the room. But this isn't funny. This is a very important topic we're talking about today. I got a slightly different setup. I put the camera up higher. I thought it would look better. We'll see when I look at the footage. I usually only shoot these things once. Anyhow, we're talking about Julian Assange. Yes, WikiLeaks. I don't know how much you know about WikiLeaks, but they're a very important entity now. Very few cable TV news networks, network TV, and your local news, they don't do investigative journalism anymore. Very few of them do. And if they're doing it, it's, very specific kind of things. They'll your local news might do the whole consumer thing for a while, right? They'll put the hidden camera on some person and let them go get ripped off by a mechanic and then show up at the garage a few days later. But even something like that, it's very costly, right? I mean, you could go to the garage and maybe the guy, it turns out he's honest. Maybe it turns out that day he doesn't want to rip people off because when you rip people off, you can't do it forever. You know you're going to get caught. So it can be something that takes many, many days. And believe me when I tell you, news reporters don't want to spend a long time doing their reports. They do not. I know from personal experience. I think I may have told in one of my videos my horrible experience with reporters. One was a guy was going to interview me for the local news when I was doing the Jersey Devil comic, and he absolutely insisted on doing it on a day I was working. I was working at this nursery, answering the phone. It was very early in the morning, and it was a nursery, so I wasn't dressed right. Like, you kind of had to dress down at this job because you're essentially sitting in a garage that, there was a lot of dirt and dust and stuff. So nobody wore nice clothes to this thing. I showed up unshaven. The boss didn't care. I just had to answer the phone. And the news reporter was like, yeah, I'll interview you today. And I was like, well, can't we wait till tomorrow? Because then I could arrange a time and get ready and have my comics and, have a whole look. No, it was either now or never. So he interviewed me in like the driveway of the nursery. I looked like hell. No, I won't show you the footage. Another time I was interviewed, a few times I was interviewed by newspaper reporters. And they had this thing where they would follow this format when they did a local report. They would report your age and where you lived. And I swear to you, I did a bunch of interviews, and like 3 times in a row, the reporter would always say something like in the article, Tony DiGerolamo, age 36, who still lives at home with his parents. And I was like, why would they mention that in the article? Like, that had nothing to do with the comic. And, it was very rarely did I get a decently written article about the actual comic. They were always focused on me and the fact that I lived with my parents at the time. So, and I swear this happened. I got an interview. I forget what paper she wrote for. I want to say the Enquirer, but I'm not sure that was it. But it was a decent-sized local paper, and I said to her during the interview, I said, please, don't mention my age and that I live with my parents. I don't know why, but the last 3 articles, everybody did that. So if you could please not mention that, I would really appreciate it. And she went, oh yeah, sure. And she did that. It was like the first line of the article. So believe me when I tell you, local reporters, at least in my experience, are some of the laziest people I've ever met. Now, that's not all of them. I had a couple of articles that were great. I had a reporter, man, she read all my comics and was talking about the storyline and detail that she could only have gotten by reading the comics. And it was a great article. And I got that one like laminated. I used to take it to shows as part of, my signage to show everybody, look, and it was a great article. I would Xerox that all the time. This is back in the day. And, show it to people. It was a great article. It was in-depth. It was well written. There wasn't typos. But that was the exception, not the rule. Most of these reporters are just terrible at their jobs. And hey, they don't get paid much. They have to run around and report on things that are boring, stuff they don't want to write about. I get it. I applied to be a local reporter a few times, and I had a friend who did it. It was absolute hell. He would tell me he'd be driving around South Jersey, going to court to take notes on a trial or whatever. He said it sucked. It was boring. It was stupid. But it's a job, and you got to do the job right, in my opinion. But most people just don't have that opinion, and reporters are just like most people. They do their job half-assed because they really want to be doing something else. So when I tell you that there is not investigative journalism going on a local level, and the national level, it's not, not much better. Now, do they have people around the world? Yeah, sometimes, if it's a ratings grabber, right? It's a ratings grabber on CNN because they bill themselves as being international. And they have international correspondents because they have a separate channel for CNN International. So if they do something on that, they can use the footage again, they can use the report again, the reporters can report, there's money in that for them. But if there's no money in it, they ain't gonna do much. It used to be, think about this. You may not be old enough to remember, but they used to have reporters in Vietnam, like with the troops, embedded with the troops, but like they weren't embedded in the troops in that they had to listen to the troops like they do now. Like since 9/11, the troops, they get embedded, they got to listen to the Marines or whomever, and a lot of times they're not going to report certain things because they don't want to make the troops look bad. That was not the case during the Vietnam War. They would shoot anything. Video, film-wise. And they were showing people dying and troops dying. And at that time, the invention of television was still relatively new. And the people at the Pentagon and the people in the U.S. government, they didn't understand the impact those images would have. And they did have an impact. And that's why the Vietnam War ended. People couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't take watching people die on TV. I saw a tiny bit of it. I was a little too young to be watching that kind of stuff. It came across the TV a couple of times and I caught glimpses of it, but I don't really remember it. Looking back at some of the footage, some of it looks familiar to me because I was born in '66 and the war was over in early '70s. I don't remember, but so there was, I was just old enough to kind of remember some of those images. And then when I see them on YouTube, I go, oh yeah, I kind of vaguely remember this. But, for the people who were adults then, it was shocking. It was shocking. Can you imagine watching TV and seeing somebody die? You can go on YouTube and see it right now, anytime. I don't like to watch those videos myself. They upset me. Some people watch them all the time. And if it's like a foreign country, maybe you're kind of so distant from it, you don't really go, well, I don't really know that guy. It's less real to you. But if you're seeing American troops being shot, you're going to say, hey, this war sucks. That could be my friend. I have a friend who's stationed in Afghanistan. I had a friend who was stationed in Afghanistan. He served for a year. He was in the reserves. They rotated him in and he came out. And look, not everybody's going to be in heavy combat situations, but the U.S. government now and the Pentagon, they're very much aware of their image and the PR around images. They don't like to show negative images of the troops of any kind. That's why the footage Julian Assange showed us of the helicopter guys just shredding people on the ground was so shocking. it's very shocking. And the callousness with which the guys in the helicopter talk about what they're doing is brutal. So, I mean, you really should see the footage if you have it, because it is shocking, even in this day and age of seeing all kinds of horrors on the internet. It's shocking. You see these guys, and they're news reporters, and they got cameras, and they get all shot up, and they're trying to hide, but these are 50 caliber machine guns. They go through anything. Anything. You can't hide in a building. These guys tried to hide behind cinder block thick, the walls made of cinder block. They're trying to dive down. The whole area is just covered in bullets. You just see bullets raining down from everywhere. And these guys the helicopters are kind of far away. They're pretty far away. Like, these guys didn't know the helicopter was above them. It's not like in Vietnam where the helicopter would have had to been overhead and the guy would have been like shooting out of it half-assed. This is like a video game to some extent, in that it's too easy. And so they shoot up these guys, and then a van pulls up to try to get the wounded out of there. Now, these aren't military guys at all. Whatever you think, either the guys in the helicopter targeted the wrong guys on purpose or by mistake. But either way, there's no mistake about the guy who shows up in the van to help the wounded. He is definitely not anybody other than a guy trying to help. And they shoot that van up, and if you look at the video closely, you can see there may or may not be a smaller person in the van too, who may be a child. But I don't think they ever determined it. But it's bad. And it was very routine. And you can tell by the way they talk in the video, it's a routine mission. It's not anything spectacular. These guys don't do it and then go, oh my God, what have we done? They go, yeah, okay, on to the next one. Which tells you that this isn't the first time it's happened. This is just the time you got it on video. So that's one of the things Julian Assange exposed. So it's not just about the DNC emails. And a lot of people say, well, he's a big fan of Russia and he works for Russia. WikiLeaks has exposed Russia. But the kind of things that, first off, nobody in this country ever follows Russian politics very closely. So the kind of things they expose, it's not going to have a lot of meaning unless you drill down into it. Unless people cover it, which they don't. They don't really cover it here. Because most of the journalists here don't see WikiLeaks as an ally. They see it as the competition. It's destroying the credibility of some of the mainstream media outlets. The New York Times used to be the place. The Washington Post, even CNN used to be news. Now you have Cuomo on the air saying, it is illegal to have the emails from WikiLeaks, but not for us, we're the media. I mean, he actually said that on CNN, and you can Google the footage yourself and see it. So it's a horror show that these people who are supposedly journalists, they're not really journalists anymore, have allowed Julian to be arrested, and they're doing nothing. They're doing absolutely nothing to say, hey, we gotta do something here. We cannot allow Julian Assange to be thrown in prison for what he did, because what he did was journalism. Now, you may not believe that. You may believe the government's story that he was involved in hacking things. But he has always maintained, as has WikiLeaks always maintained, that they don't hack. They don't need to hack. Why would they need to hack? They get stuff. The guy who delivered the DNC emails has already told people, and it's quite public if you look it up on the internet, Craig Murray is his name, that he was the guy who delivered the emails. He went to Washington, he got a thumb drive, I believe, and brought it back. And that is consistent with how the emails were downloaded. The thumb drive, that it was downloaded onto a thumb drive. It's totally consistent. No one's ever disproven it. And yet, there's this storyline that the mainstream media pushes over and over again that no. It was hacked. It was hacked by the Russians with Vladimir Putin and Julian Assange to get at Hillary Clinton. And you have to ask yourself, okay, suppose that's true. Suppose that is true. If that's true, why has WikiLeaks published things about the Russian government? Why did Julian Assange go to London at all? Why would he travel around the world if he was a Russian asset? He doesn't need to travel if you're a hacker. You don't need to travel. Why do you need to travel? You can hack anyone from anywhere on the earth. The internet is international. You don't need to be in any one spot. The only thing you need is you need access. And if you're an asset of the Russian government will give you total access to the internet as they have it. And that's fairly decent access, at least as decent as anyone else outside the United States. And if you're going to hack from Russia, understand, if you're going to hack from anywhere other than inside the United States or even inside the United States, really, the NSA has every major internet hub rigged. Edward Snowden already exposed that. They've got gadgets on every possible major server and computer they could get their grubby mitts on. They actually have, in some cases, installed software on brand new computers before they shipped. Right? There was a story a few years back that the NSA would intercept shipments of stuff in the mail or in FedEx or in UPS, get the computers, install stuff on the computers, wrap it all back up, and send it out to whoever bought the computer. So you would have no idea that the NSA could completely compromise your computer. None. So how are you going to beat that? How is Russia going to beat something like that? And they don't make computers in Russia, to the best of my knowledge. If they do, they'd have to make them from the ground up, and they'd certainly have to get the parts from, well, not the United States because we don't make them here, but directly from the manufacturers who are run by Americans through China. So could they get them? Well, they'd also be running the risk that the Chinese would be spying on them. Russia and China aren't the same country. They spy on each other. So, you know, what are the Russians? A third-rate or second-rate country at best. They have the GDP that's comparable to Spain. Now think about that. Think about Spain as a country in terms of its money. I'm laughing because it's pretty laughable. Now think of Russia. Russia is gigantic. It is number 2 or 3. I think it's 2. Yeah, it's 2 in terms of its military. Right? We outspend the top military, and that would be Russia, 10-1. We outspend them 10-1. So, like, here's the United States, here's Russia, here's China, and then like everybody else is like way below. That's a big overhead to upkeep. It's a huge overhead. And they still have many nuclear missiles, some of which they had to upgrade. It's a huge overhead. And they're under all kinds of sanctions. And they're also building up, trying to build up from the former Soviet Union, which was a goddamn mess. So you have to ask yourself, do these guys really want to make an enemy of the United States when, if they were an ally, they could increase their economy and their country? And you might say, oh, well, you know, if they could control the United States, they could run the show. Yeah, if they could. But again, they're a second-rate power. We're a first-rate power. Do you think all the billionaires and corporations that actually control the world are going to allow Russia to suddenly muscle in on the U.S. government? No, I don't think so. They're not going to allow them to, because they don't want Russian companies to compete in the marketplace. They're going to keep them down. The only thing Russia's got, and this is probably why Trump wants to make peace with them, is they got tons of real estate. Tons of undeveloped real estate. More than any other country in the world. So that's one of the reasons Trump wants to make peace. Certainly a peaceful reason. Yeah, I mean, you could call Trump greedy all you want. I agree with you. He's probably the greediest guy who ever lived. So what? Let him make peace with Russia. Better we have peace with Russia than nuclear war. I just did a anti-war comic about it, and there have been 10 times in the history of the world where we came close to nuclear war with Russia. The last time was in 1995. Boris Yeltsin was president of Russia. This is Russia. And we launched, or Canada launched, a rocket to study the northern lights. Russia had been alerted, but the message didn't get to Yeltsin for whatever reason. And it tripped all the radar in Russia. The Russians thought they were under attack, but fortunately, Yeltsin didn't launch. Now, at that time, we had great relations with Yeltsin. Boris Yeltsin was very corrupt and kind of drunk, but the United States loved him, and we were in good standing with them. We don't have great relations now with Putin. And so if that kind of thing happens again, we could be in trouble. We could be in big trouble. We don't want a nuclear war. Nuclear war, it's over. First off, the internet's done. You're not going to see any videos. The EMP burst will kill the internet. So even if you manage to survive, you're not going to have any power. You're not going to have any internet. You probably are going to be dying of radiation poison. I'm going to be dead. I'm in New Jersey. We're done. Everybody in New Jersey is going to be dead. It's going to hit the Philadelphia shipyards, one of the nukes, and I'm in the Philly suburbs. I'm not going to be far enough away. 500 mile an hour winds are going to rip my house right off its foundation, and the only thing left is going to be my chimney and maybe the basement. And if I'm lucky, me and Joan will be in the basement, and we'll survive, I don't know, probably another couple of weeks before the radiation kills us. And I'll probably be blind because, the blast will blind everybody, even people like underground and in a closet with their eyes closed, because it'll be just that bright. The radiation will kill me. I'll never be able to find any clean water or anything clean to eat. So whatever food I manage to squirrel away in the basement will be all I'll have left for the rest of my life. And so the fallout will be everywhere. I won't be able to drive my car. I'll be trapped here basically until I die. And so will a lot of people. And they'll just slowly die, or they'll go outside and try to make a run for it. But you're screwed. You're screwed if there's a nuclear war. If you're lucky and you live out in the middle of nowhere and the nukes don't hit you, maybe you survive for a while, but the nuclear fallout will get up in the clouds, and it'll move across the country. So you'll be hit by radioactive water and waste, and you'll get sick. You'll get sick. Everything will die. The fallout will cause massive darkness, a lot of cold. It'll be a mess. The only people who are going to survive are maybe some islanders out in the middle of nowhere that they're just fortunate enough not to be in the fallout radius. Maybe Australia. They're down south that won't get hit by nukes. Maybe some Argentinians. So nuclear war is a big deal. It is the deal, and it has to be avoided at all costs. And you may be out there saying, "Well, what about Russia? What about Russia controls us?" Russia doesn't control us. The billionaires in this country wouldn't allow it. They're rich beyond anything. And they're not going to allow a second-rate power like Russia to do anything. That's why they're under sanctions, to keep them out of the marketplace. That's why, well, I don't want to get into the whole thing. So why do we need Julian Assange? Julian Assange is actually doing reporting, okay? It was a big deal, the DNC emails. They were a big deal. It showed that Hillary rigged both primaries. She screwed over Bernie. Bernie would have been president. I wouldn't have voted for him, but he would have been president because I think he would have beat Trump. He had a populist message. Trump did too, but Bernie had a nicer image than Trump did. Now, Bernie doesn't stand a chance. No way. Trump has gotten too far entrenched, and he will use that to his advantage. Bernie endorsed Hillary Clinton. He looks like a hypocrite. He'll get dragged down by identity politics. Whoever the nominee is for the Democrats, they're going to be dragged down by identity politics. It's already starting to happen. Everybody's getting dragged. And the identity politics people who are nominated, they either won't get nominated because the party is smart enough to know they can't raise any money, or if by some miracle the DNC says, well, yeah, let's nominate an identity politics person, they're never going to get enough votes. The moderates will flee the Democratic Party. So, what needed to happen was after WikiLeaks exposed Hillary Clinton for who she was, Hillary needed to be kicked out. She needed to be ostracized from the Democratic Party, and she hasn't been. She is too ensconced in it for now. And because of that, the Democrats are going to lose again. The Democrats did not learn their lesson. Julian Assange taught them that lesson, and that's why they're not helping it. That's why no one in the media is helping them, because they're all have sided with the Democrats. That's where they've mostly all sided, and they don't care. He made them look bad. It's like, and I can relate to this because in a lot of ways I'm like this. It's like the guy who tells the truth to his own detriment, but no one wants to hear it, right? Because it just makes a lot of work for everybody, even though they know it's true. And look, if it's in a workplace, I get it. Nobody wants to do more work. Nobody really cares about the job. If you're just working somewhere, it's not important. There are no lives on the line. That's different. There are lives on the line here. And Assange has opened up governments, as WikiLeaks has said. And we need that information. We need it. We need to know what these governments are up to. And look, the genie's out of the bottle anyway. There are other sites other than WikiLeaks who do this now. So, trying to punish Assange for what everybody does now, it's not even going to do anything. The only thing it's going to do from the vantage point of the people who want to punish them is they just want to send a message. If you expose us, we're coming to get you. That's really the message. That's why they went after Chelsea Manning again. They don't want to let this go. They were embarrassed. And I say there are people in the government who were embarrassed by these revelations. And they should have been. But how you respond to embarrassment is not to cover it up. It is to say, well, we made a mistake and we're going to do better next time. Or the people in charge have to fire the people responsible for these mistakes. Those guys in the helicopter, they should have been tried for war crimes. It was a war crime what they did. The guys who ordered it should have been tried for war crimes. Everybody up the chain of command should have been responsible for what happened in that helicopter. But they're not, because the system in reality doesn't work that way. The reality is people cover their asses. And when you're in charge, you find somebody to take the blame, a guy underneath you takes the blame, and you go, well, I didn't tell him to do that. You lie, or you you have somebody take the blame. That's what happens. Which is why, if you're not in charge, if you're a little person, not little in stature, but just a regular schmo like me, you have to back a guy like Julian Assange, because what he does impacts the elites. Doesn't impact us. We're not in charge of the government. We're not in charge of the banks. This is exactly what we need to have happen to help us. We want the elites constantly worried they're being watched, because they do less. They do less corruption. Donald Trump is a corrupt guy, in my opinion, but because he's been under such constant scrutiny, there's not much he can do. Not much he can do to get away with. Not much at all. So a guy like him, his instinct is, well, I'm going to do good until people let their guard down. That's what a truly bad guy who has at least some strategy in mind, that's what he's going to do. Oh, these people are after me? Well, I just won't do anything. That's what criminals do. They lay low. If you're a big-time mafia kingpin and you know the government's watching you, you don't commit crimes in front of them. That's exactly what Donald Trump is going to do and has done. He's going to get reelected. You might as well suck it up and go with it. He's figuring out the mechanisms of power. His second term is going to be, you think the first term was crazy? Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. You haven't seen the craziest stuff from Donald Trump yet. So, I'll say it again, his main weakness is too much spending. But Trump runs the risk of losing the election if he goes after Assange. Because I tell you right now, there are a lot of people who remember what he said during the election, and he owes Assange, and that's bad karma. He owes him big time. And Assange didn't get Trump elected. Hillary Clinton lost because she's a corrupt person and got exposed. That's all there is to it. If Hillary Clinton hadn't done this, there wouldn't have been any emails. If she had encrypted her emails, there wouldn't have been any emails, because it would have required an IT person to get those emails who could have had the encryption code. And that, to me, is the biggest crime out of all of this, is that Hillary Clinton is so goddamn cheap. She didn't pay a guy to encrypt her server. You're working as a Secretary of State, and you don't say to your underlings, listen, go hire a guy, a top-of-the-line IT guy. I'm worth millions of dollars. Make sure he, gives me a server that's like $200,000 or some ridiculous price, so I know it's friggin' encrypted and no one will ever read these emails. Like, that's what she should have had. The fact that she thought, oh, it's no big deal. No one can see my emails. What is email anyway? No, that's stupid. And she knows better. She knows better. She thought, don't worry, I'll be elected president. All this stuff will be swept under the rug. No one's going to investigate because I'll be in charge. That's what she thought. That's what we all thought. And that's exactly what would have happened if she had become president. So, Julian Assange needs to be free. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you care about the freedom of press at all, you need to write your congressman. You need to write Trump, and you need to tell him, free Julian Assange. And we need to do this in great numbers. It has to be in great numbers. Don't just sign a petition. Make it personal. Call. Be polite, but call your senators, call your representative, and say, please free Julian Assange. Do it. Because if you don't, and Julian Assange is thrown in jail for what he did, that's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. And it'll take a few years, but then they'll arrest another journalist. And it won't quite be Julian Assange, but it'll be an independent media guy who's kind of almost like him. And then there'll be another guy, and that guy will be an independent guy, fairly mainstream. Then there'll be another guy. he'll be a mainstream guy. And then that'll be it. That'll be it for free press in the world. Because once you're arresting the mainstream guys, these guys, as I said, they're very lazy. They want their jobs. Very few of them do their jobs now. And they have a relatively free press. Once people start going to jail, there'll be no reason. Look, I thought about being a reporter and a journalist. Back in the 80s, I decided not to do it. One of the reasons I decided not to do it is because I knew I'd be one of those guys who was a stickler for the truth. And I could see back in the 80s how journalism was being ruined by just cable TV. I went to college with people who were going to be reporters on your local television, sports reporters, weather girls, everything. And back then, in the 80s, all most of them cared about was their hair and their sign-offs. Hi, I'm so-and-so. For the sports guys, it was all about their adjectives. These people did not care about doing research. These people did not care about the truth. These people barely did their homework in communications. And that transferred right over to how they did their job. None of these people care. Most of them don't. Tiny minority that do. The tiny minority of the competent people who actually do work. You may be one of those people, and you can relate. But those people are few. Most people approach their job, it's just a job. I do it, I make some money, I go home, and I try to forget about it. And if you work at a produce stand or, just work at a regular job, I get it. That's cool. I don't begrudge you that. I don't begrudge you if you work some boring ass job. But if you're in journalism, if you're in the government, if you're in the military, if you're in law enforcement, if you're in medical, if you're in anything that's judicial as a lawyer, those are different kinds of jobs. Those jobs are important, and people's lives hang in the balance. And you have a responsibility to do your job properly because you have people's lives in your hands. If you don't have people's lives in your hands, I don't care what you do. But if you have people's lives in your hands, you're responsible. And you better be responsible. Otherwise, I want to see you thrown in jail for your incompetence. I want to see you, your career ruined, your pension gone. And that's one of the things, say what you want about Trump. He loves firing people. I love that he keeps firing people. I love it. Fire all the people you want. Keep replacing them. Eventually, that's evolution. Keep firing enough people, you're going to get the best people for the jobs eventually. That's evolution. And yes, he's going to tend to go with people who agree with him. That's just a natural inclination of people. But when you're hiring that many people in the U.S. government, it's also about competence because those are high-level jobs. And if you treat them at all seriously, you're lucky you get any sleep. You wake up and all you are is your job. You're in a constant state of job. That is not a life for me. I can't do it. I burn out too quick. And I'm a creative guy. Creative guys, we're different. We feel too much. Our brains work differently. Yeah, I can't do that. I could help. I could help for a while, but after a while, that grind would set me off. I'd break. But for the people who do it, they're under tremendous pressure, but they should be because they've got very important jobs, but they also should be very responsible for them. And they should be highly paid, which many of them are. So, Julian Assange, however, is not getting highly paid. And he's one of those guys. He's just one of those guys. He's the guy in the room that tells a true story that nobody wants to hear. Everybody's embarrassed about, oh, why you got to say that? And he goes, well, it's true. Or he posts something, or he does something, and you can't fault him for his accuracy. You just fault him for the way he does stuff. And sometimes he does. Look, a guy like him, he's got an ego. But he doesn't deserve to have his life ruined. He absolutely does not. I mean, the U.S. government wants to fine him, ban him, kick him out of the country. I could see that. But you cannot go after an Australian citizen for treason in the United States. That is wrong. You cannot be a treason. You cannot commit treason against a country that you're not a citizen in. Okay? And again, leaks. Cannot prosecute leaks. To prosecute leaks, no. All right, finally my prediction. What's going to happen? Well, that's a tough one. Scott Adams, his prediction, was one thing. My prediction is I'm very much an optimist. My hope is somehow he's going to get out from under this. Adams seems to think that Trump's going to do it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Trump ain't going to do it. I don't think it has anything to do with being pressured by the guys in his own administration, which I'm sure they are pressing him. I think it has everything to do with Trump he never forgets his enemies, but I think he does forget his friends. And I think it's a poor strategic move, but I don't think he's going to do anything. I think he should. I think he should just pardon him or call off the dogs or whatever he needs to do. But I don't think so. I don't know if the UK will cut him loose. That is kind of a possibility. It may be that if Trump does cut him loose, Trump will cut some sort of deal with the factions within the CIA and the deep state and say, listen, we got to cut this guy loose, but I don't want to make you guys look bad. So let's cut him loose in the UK on a technicality, and then you guys don't get the blame, and we can sort of just throw up our hands and go, well, we can't do anything. And we'll let him, meander away to Russia or something like Snowden did, or whatever. That to me would be dumb for a lot of reasons, but I could see that happening for political reasons within the CIA. I think it would be smarter to let Trump just pardon him, bring him in, and let him be an ally. Why wouldn't you want WikiLeaks, Julian Assange as an ally? The guy knows his cyber stuff. He's got access to hackers all over the world who have been making the NSA look like chumps. So why not bring him in, make him an ally? Why not co-opt him? Why not co-opt him? It would be a genius move. Now, yeah, some people would get their panties in a bunch in the NSA and the CIA, but who cares? Once you co-opt the guy, he's yours, basically. And he could come out and say stuff later like, well, Trump didn't do what I thought he would do, or he didn't do what I thought he was going to do. At that time, you already work for the CIA. He'd be compromised in his own way. He'd be co-opted in his own way. But that's probably not going to happen. I give that probably the lowest percentage. The other percentage is that he does come to the United States and they put him on trial and he just gets off, which I think I give that maybe a 30% chance, simply because the trial, I don't think they could make it a secret trial, and I just don't think they have enough evidence. They're not going to get Chelsea to squeal, and all this cyber stuff is way too complicated for the old geezers who are usually the judges. No way they're going to get it. They're going to kind of get it, and at the end of the day, they're going to go, well, I don't think these guys did anything, you know, unless they got the judge in their pocket, you know, and once they get Julian in the court system, he'll be appealing and appeal. I mean, it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And those guys are going to cut Julian loose. They're going to cut him loose. That I know. The Supreme Court will definitely cut him loose. So I don't think there's any chance they're going to get him in front of a secret court. They're going to get him in the regular system, and it's going to shoot right up to the Supreme Court. And that's going to take years. And in the meantime, Julian's going to be running free. And by the time, and if they even manage to convict him, he's going to get time served. So he's going to walk away. And everybody in the world's going to be donating. So that's my take. That's my take on the outcome. So I give it about a 30% chance of that. I guess I got to go with the UK letting him go. That's going to be my current bet. The UK cuts him loose, but really behind the scenes, it's the U.S. government telling the UK, okay, here's how we're going to make it look like this isn't our fault. We're going to make it look like your fault, and you cut him loose, and we're just going to shrug and say, So there's my prediction. So free Julian Assange, and I think it's very low that they're going to like kill him or send him to Guantanamo or anything like that. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I don't think Trump can allow that at this point for political reasons, even beyond his own, internationally, there would be an outcry. No way. No way. Even The Guardian came out with a news article saying, hey, this ain't cool, arresting Julian Assange. I think in the end, the UK's going to just take the hit for all their police state nonsense. And God forbid if he dies in custody. Oh my God, that would be a tragedy on so many different levels. Please don't let that happen. But I say Julian. I think it's better than 80% that Julian just goes free eventually, after a long, arduous process. Eventually, they just cut him loose or give him time served. Worst case scenario, he gets time served, because it'll drag through the U.S. courts forever. So, anyhow, free Julian Assange. That's Tony D's Media Podcast ramble for tonight. I got to get back to work. I will see you next time. Oh, the camera's much further away now. I have to stand up. See ya.